former chair of the ACCC, Allan Fels, was commissioned by the ACTU to conduct an inquiry into price gouging and unfair pricing practices. He subsequently released a report scathing its assessment of the big retailers. He joins us now from Melbourne. Allan Fels, welcome. So Woolworths has said this announcement today about the retirement of Brad Banducci was a long time coming rather than being prompted by anything recent. What do you believe was behind it?
Well, it was somewhat unexpected on timing and follows so closely on that disastrous interview. So I think maybe there were two reasons for the immediacy. One was his rather badly failed Public Relations 101 by walking out on that interview, also mishandling the Australia Day sales. And secondly, they've got multiple public inquiries coming up. And companies probably punishing him for his success in getting their profits and profit margins way up. But there would be great difficulty presenting that at the inquiries. So I think they would have been concerned about him appearing at the public inquiries.
We'll get into more detail on the profit margins in a moment, but I just wanted to talk just one more question about that interview. The key moment of that interview in terms of the train wreck component was the comment about Rod Sims. What did you make of that?
Well, I thought it was silly, and often when people are in a weak position in an argument, they turn to personal criticism or ad hoc comment on a person as a distraction. It was a particularly ill-judged comment. Rod Sims is alive, very active, and he was in charge of that area for 10 or 11 years and knows it very well.
Okay, now, so turning to today's profit announcement, what do you make of the Woolworths profit margin on food and groceries outlined today?
Well, that's the good question to ask, because their overall results were brought down by some losses and accounting entries regarding other things. Their food margins have gone up from about 5.8 to 6.1%, and there's been a fairly steady growth in them over the last few years, and it's not clear at all that they're justified by cost increases. So they've got big questions to answer to the public and to all the inquiries. The ACCC has got the power to dig in deep and find out the full truth. But on the face of it, they've been lifting their profits and profit markups and everything at a time when there's a huge cost of living crisis for everyone in Australia.
But the supermarkets argue that costs are going up for everyone, businesses included. So on what basis do you argue that those price increases, the profit margin increases, do not seem justified?
Well, I've never heard a business person justify price rise without invoking cost increases and never mentioning a bit of profit markup that they might have added on. But at least in this case, we know the margins have gone up quite significantly. They were down at something like 4% or less 4 or 5 years ago. They've gone up 6%. Costs have not been going up that much, particularly their big cost, which is wages. Wages have been stuck and stagnant, and that makes rises in profits more unacceptable. You know, people are having wages kept down, and instead of at least the benefit being passed on to consumers, it seems to be going into the pocket of, in this case, the big supermarkets.
And so what should be done to level the playing field?
Well, I think, first of all, more public exposure. Secondly, a much stronger merger law, a power of divestiture to break up big business in the same way as is possible in the United States. It might not apply to big retail here, and it would only be if a court determined that that was the right answer. But it would have a very big effect on behaviour by all big business is if the possibility of that big step being brought out was in existence.
Are you confident the government will end up doing something pretty substantial to address this in the wake of all these inquiries that are happening now?
Moderately confident. They've now done their tax bit, some other things. They've got to get on with some reforms. These reforms all look feasible, particularly the stronger merger law, and also having a national competition policy like we had 10 years ago, attacking government restrictions on competition. But if the government has to do it because it's got to prove a dinkum about comprehensive economic reform, not just a one-off tax reform. They've got to follow through with something, and this is an obvious, if difficult thing to do because there'll be big business opposition.
Yeah, so you're concerned that the tendency will be for tinkering at the edges?
Yes, that's always a situation. Really heavy, unwarranted pressure. Yesterday's rejection by the tribunal of an ACCC merger decision should give business and scaremongers actually more confidence that the system works. The ACCC hasn't got final power. It can be overruled if it makes questionable decisions.
Okay, Allan